Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Anira, for that very kind introduction, and also for bringing us together for this forum. I was super impressed, Anira, because of the way you pronounced my name. It was perfect. So, and I hope I'm doing justice also to yours. It was really excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So it is my immense pleasure to welcome all of you to IFC this afternoon, the International Financial Corporation, for a lovely afternoon of important discussions on a top priority for this institution. I'm sure you're all impressed with the weather that we've arranged for everyone. It's lovely weather to have this discussion in. And also, what is a top priority for the World Bank Group as a whole? And that priority is making and advancing the business case for gender equality, which Yanira just referred to. As you all know, this is also the month when we celebrated International Women's Day, which gave us a time to reflect on and to reaffirm our commitment and our ambition to mainstream gender across all our work across the World Bank Group, but more importantly, across IFC. So as we look at the program before us this afternoon, my colleagues will be touching upon many of our initiatives, on our projects, on our programs, our vision, and our strategy on gender. For example, Lottie Salazar, who I see is on the program, will have much to say about paving the way for more women at the decision-making level. This is essential because research shows that women in leadership correlates with high environmental, social, and governance standards, which leads to improved business performance and also to inclusive economic growth. My colleague, Heather Kipnis, who is also one of our acting managers for IFC's gender work, will then share how we're addressing gender gaps and also pushing for greater financial inclusion for women through our direct investments, but also through innovative research. Now, closing gaps between women and men's economic participation drives the growth of businesses and economies, but also improves the lives of families and communities. In every instance, what we keep front and center is clear. Gender equality and economic inclusion are essential and vital for economic growth and development. No country, community, or economy can achieve its potential or meet the challenges of the 21st century without the full and equal participation of women and girls and boys and men. And this certainly applies to Latin America and to the Caribbean. This region in particular has made significant progress on gender equality over the last few decades. Still, women face numerous barriers to fully participating in the economy. These barriers include, to mention a few of them, the ownership of financial and digital assets, affordable childcare, the quality of jobs, and the representation of women in leadership positions and in non-traditional roles. Indigenous women often face the greatest disadvantages with the double constraints of ethnicity and gender. Now, while there have been advancements in women participating in the LAC region's labor force, the rate is still lower than for men. To give you a few facts and statistics, in fact, the female labor force participation for 2020 is 53% compared with 76% for men. This statistics is from ILO's research in 2020. We also see differences in income between women and men, and quoting a World Bank report from 2018, which means that LAC countries are losing the incredible number of $6.7 trillion in wealth. An incredible amount, just to think about it, is bigger than the whole continental economies. Companies in the LAC region have made progress in terms of female participation, but women-owned SMEs still face a large financing gap of up to $92 billion, which is a number that comes from our own research here at IFC from 2020. Women are also more likely to be entrepreneurs by necessity, as opposed to choice, as they start businesses because they are denied opportunities in the formal labor market, a statistic that we also get from a World Bank study. Now, in LAC and around the world, IFC's gender work is informed by over a decade of investment and advisory experience, but also by research and analysis. So 10 years ago, we at the IFC began our Gender Lens investing journey with the launch of our Banking on Women program, which is a dedicated business line that is focused on increasing access to finance for women entrepreneurs. As of December 2022, this program has mobilized and has invested over $4 billion in banks and financial institutions, specifically to grow financial and business services for women entrepreneurs. Over the last several years, IFC's gender work has expanded across regions and industries through gender-focused investments and through client-specific advisory services. Today, each industry department has a dedicated gender focus, which is expanding investment and advisory services and offerings to address inequalities across all the sectors that we work on at the IFC. We look at closing gaps for women as employees, women as entrepreneurs, women as consumers, and most importantly, women as business leaders. What this means is that IFC's gender-specific investment facilities are dedicated to solutions that support women's entrepreneurship through great access to capital markets, to markets and capacity building, including through the development of skills and networks. The MET community, which has been instrumental in making this forum possible, is one organization that is already standing with women entrepreneurs through training, through mentorship, and through networking. And congratulations again on that partnership with us, Yanira. What this also means is using innovative financing instruments such as blended finance and sustainable finance to close gender gaps and also to scale IFC's gender work. For example, through existing blended finance facilities such as the Women Entrepreneurs Opportunity Facility, IFC has been able to pair innovative investment mechanisms with early stage funds at differentiated deal terms that are linked to gender targets. I'm also very proud of how IFC has invested $575 million across 6 gender bonds that have been issued by private sector institutions, including in Brazil, in Thailand, and in Tanzania. Each of these, very importantly, was the first of its kind in its particular market. As we look ahead now, we are currently sharing IFC's contributions to the update, which is underway, of the World Bank Group's wide gender strategy. We want to ensure that the business case for gender equity, for gender equality, comes through loud and clear, and that we can engage the private sector as prime partners in empowering women as leaders and as entrepreneurs. In all our conversations and all our concrete actions, the bottom line remains, when she wins, sorry, excuse me. I think it's just a sound. Don't worry about it. So in all our conversations and all our concrete actions, the bottom line remains that when she wins, we all win. So today and every day, let's keep that top of mind as we create more gender inclusive economies and societies that benefit us all. And with that, I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to wish you all a very fruitful discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Buenos días y bienvenidos a todas y todos aquí a la IFC. And I have to stop here with my Spanish because that's about it. I prepped it well, this one, but that's about it. So it's really a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see such a huge audience, not only here in the room, but last year we had 1,500 people online. I don't know how many we have this year.
Yeah. Yes. So can you put the next slide?
Oh, I can do it. No, I'm the master of the slide.
Okay.
Wait, that's why I go remote.
Okay.
Women, they always take over, you know.
Okay. I just wanted to, because I know where is the problem.
Okay, you got it there? Okay, that's me, but you see me here, I don't need the picture. Okay, that was Emmanuel, me. Okay, the next one is the movie. So let me go back to everybody. I think that's better, right? So, okay. So I forgot what I was. So anyway, last year we had 1,500 participants. I don't know how many, probably more. I hope so. That's really a show of support for women entrepreneurship in Latin America in particular. I'm really pleased to be here also because this was a kind invitation of Yanire, the founder of MET, and a very good friend. Yanire called me early this morning after I prepared my speech, and she said, I want you to talk and say a few words about me and why I'm here, right? Why am I talking to you? I do not like talking about myself. I'm Italian. We grow up and I went to Jesuit school. We don't talk. We just listen. So I feel a bit awkward about this, but let me go with it. So I've been on the advisory board of MET here in the US since its inception. I've always been inspired by the passion that comes with MET. And I had the luck of having a varied career, right? So in the private sector, investment banking with large corporations. And I spent more than a decade in the private sector, but then I got bitten by the bug of development, right? The development community. And I never regretted switching path toward there. With IFC, I covered many different roles in the field and in DC. In operations, I led the change for IFC for a few years. I lived in 7 countries and I worked in more than 50. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many, but I worked in more than 50 countries, which is tiresome. I tell my children that trying to make the world a little bit better every day through my work at IFC is what I call my sleep well factor. I go to sleep and I feel, this is going to be a bit morbid, but if I don't wake up the day after, I've done something good. So that's my sleep well factor. I try to communicate with them, not so easy. Yanire and I go a long way back. We have been over 10 years working together, studying together at the beginning at Georgetown University on change management. I was always impressed by her passion for change and wanting to make a difference. She then joined my team here in IFC, and she was very passionate about helping women. And we always, as a team, felt her passion coming through when she was talking about MET. That was the big thing for Yanire. So I encouraged Yanire to follow her dreams while she was still working with me. I had no doubts she would do so well and put her energy in MET, which she did. I promised my support. I tried to deliver as far as I can. Today, MET is a force to be reckoned upon. I'm still proud of supporting MET and Yanire in our advisory board. And somehow now the roles have inverted, right? I used to be the boss. Now it's different. She's my boss, right, with MET. And the nicest part of it is that she's my boss and I don't get paid. So, but anyway, it is what it is and it's all good. I would not have done anything differently. The impact that MET has every day on the lives of countless women and their families is life-changing. And that's so critical for me, for all of us here, I think. Your presence here demonstrates it. Clearly, we have a common understanding of the vast potential of women to create opportunities, to generate growth in the economy, and still to recover from COVID-19. We're all here, nobody's wearing masks, but we shouldn't forget what has happened during the past few years. I think it's intuitive for all of us that women are essential and critical. It is certainly for me. It's like you cannot read a book and get a story if you just have half the pages. You need to have all the pages. And in the same way, you cannot build a sustainable, healthy, prosperous society with only half of a population. It's exactly as simple as that. So gender equality is a key goal for us at the International Finance Corporation in the World Bank Group, and we are pursuing it globally and within Latin America. Unfortunately, COVID has made us fall back, and the weight of the pandemic has been disproportionately stronger on women than men. Women lost jobs almost 2 times more than men during COVID. Women did 3 times as much childcare work as men during the pandemic. And reports of domestic violence went up 5 times in certain countries. A few years back, the World Economic Forum, also WEF, I think there's a copyright infringement there, but anyway, the World Economic Forum estimated it would take 100 years to reach gender parity in society. Their latest estimate post-pandemic brought this number up to 135 years. That is too much. It's far too long. So at IFC, at the World Bank Group, we believe that gender equality is an economic growth imperative, and it's central to global recovery. Study after study shows that when women and men are equal, it benefits everyone. This is easily measured in private equity companies. When you have gender balanced team, their returns are up by 20% compared to non-gender balanced team. If gender disparities were eliminated, refugee women would add well over $1 trillion to the global GDP. This is what is driving IFC, what is driving me to support women access to opportunities in entrepreneurship. Emmanuel mentioned numerous examples of how IFC is having an impact to support gender equality. The All World Bank Group as a whole is supportive, having rolled out many programs for women-run small and medium enterprises in the past few years. Now I would like to share a video, let's hope it works, on a specific product, insurance for women entrepreneurs. Less than 1/3 of women entrepreneurs are insured. And insurance can really play a role in making your business sustainable. So let me try and see. No?
In 2008, the bank where we put our savings and some of the capital of the company closed. And for us to be able to launch ORISPA at that time, we had to withdraw some of our dividends from the policies of the insurance we had. And that was a lifesaver. Insurance plays a vital role in women entrepreneurs, for it helps them to have security and manage their risk.
Before IFC, I knew that there was a market out there, but I did not know how serious the market could be and how deep and how broad and what we can do to impact the women in the country and for them to be really included in the whole economic cycle that is like developing and evolving, especially today.
Nothing is always perfect. The interview worked, but there was a voice which should have read the text coming out, but for some reason it didn't come up. It's okay. I think you got the gist. So I hope you got a little bit more inspired by the video. I watched it about 3 or 4 times, and every time I got like a little shiver on the back of my mind because it tells you it's true. Insurance or any of the other examples, and you will hear many of them today, and some of them Emmanuel already mentioned, are not like a silver bullet, right? We're not going to change everything. But together, all of these different things can make a difference, can take us closer to the goal. I think very sincerely, similarly, each one of us individually may feel that we have a very small impact. But working together, cooperating, sharing experiences, learning from each other, also through this event like WEF, that's really what will move us closer to the goal of gender equality. So let's continue to do so. I'm very grateful to see how much support there is for these efforts today here. I hope that this conference inspires to do more, get new ideas, new ways of doing things, and that this will accelerate us all to get closer to the goal. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to kick off our first panel discussion this afternoon after the excellent words by Emmanuel and Angelo. Thank you. My name is Paula Tavares. I'm a senior legal and gender specialist here with the World Bank Group, and I currently lead an IFC advisory program on business regulations for gender equity with a large focus on Africa. And it's a pleasure to be here with my 2 colleagues, Heather Kipnis, Global Product Lead for IFC's Gender and Economic Inclusion Group, and Loti Salazar, Lead for IFC's Women on Boards and in Business Leadership. And we'll be discussing gender, inclusive business and leadership this afternoon. I was going to give a little bit of the context and talk a little bit about IFC's work on gender, but I think Emmanuel and Angelo have already given us some great words on that. So I think we'll just go probably right into some of the questions. My role here is kind of twofold. I'll be talking about the work that we're leading on the advisory side on gender regulations and reforms, but also moderating the panel. So I'll start first with Heather. And ask, so IFC is a leading IFI in advancing gender and economic inclusion. I thought you could give us an overview of IFC's approach and the business case for investing in women, specifically women's entrepreneurship.
Sure. Thanks so much, Paula. And it's a delight to be here to have a conversation with you and Lottie. And thank you, Yanire, for bringing us all together today. So IFC's approach, I'm going to take a quick step back and reiterate what Emmanuel and Angelo had mentioned is why is IFC interested in advancing gender equality and inclusion. And this is because we have a strong belief that empowering women and advancing gender equality is critical for sustainable development, for reducing poverty, and also for promoting economic growth. What does that actually mean? So around the world, there are estimates that countries are losing 172 trillion. It's hard to put your head around trillions of dollars because of differences between lifetime earnings between men and women. So Angelo had highlighted earlier the impact of COVID. Women left the workforce, schools closed down, healthcare centers closed down. Many women were put into the position of having to leave their jobs for care duties. Gender-based violence skyrocketed. People became ill. I'm not trying to paint a bad picture here, but it's very dismal. And all of that forced women to leave the workforce, but also even before the pandemic, there's challenges with opportunities to start and to grow a business that women don't have an equal footing in order to generate income. So that's all contributing to that $172 trillion figure. That's why we at IFC are interested in promoting gender equality and economic inclusion. But on the other side, on a more positive note, there is a ton of evidence out there that shows why it is smart business to invest in women. And I want to give a couple of statistics, and I'll dive in a bit on the women's entrepreneurship side. So I mentioned the global care crisis just now. Well, there are quite a few companies out there providing employer-supported care. And our research has shown when companies do that, it reduces turnover, it reduces absenteeism, it creates a more positive reputation. And it increases employee engagement. Those are strong business benefits. So while companies may not think about care as a revenue generating aspect, it's actually very important for the productivity and engagement of their employees. Another example of the business case is our world has completely shifted to a digital world. And so if you look at the digital economy, e-commerce, how many of you bought goods and services off Amazon, Mercado Libre, Jumia, Lazada, wherever you are around the world? These platforms actually are a major opportunity for women entrepreneurs. There's a $300 billion opportunity for companies and women to sell their goods and services on these platforms. That's another key business case for why women should be promoted to engage more in the economy. Now, another example, you probably saw the video that Angelo just showed, the insurance industry. So insurance is a massive asset, but very few women have access to it. So we did research with insurance companies to understand, okay, what would the business case be here? It's a $1.7 trillion opportunity. Half of that is in emerging markets. So while there is these challenges and lack of opportunities, there's a massive business reason as to why companies should be thinking about how can they engage women in their operations. Now, despite the business case, this is why we're here today, because women's potential is still very much unrealized. And when we look at women entrepreneurs, there's a couple of reasons for this. One is access to capital. So Emmanuel had mentioned earlier the $1.5 trillion credit gap for debt financing. If you look at equity capital, did you know that in LAC, less than 5% of equity capital is going to women entrepreneurs? That's actually lower than the benchmark for emerging markets, which is 7%, which is still very, very low. Women entrepreneurs face trouble getting access to markets. So procurement, so selling your products and services to large companies, less than 1% of procurement spend goes to women entrepreneurs. So these are various statistics to show that there are massive gaps, and they're contributing to the representation of women entrepreneurs as they grow their firms. So 25% of formal firms are owned by women, but when you start to look at as those firms get larger, fewer women are represented. It drops to about 17%. So here at IFC, it is our commitment to be able to move the needle and make sure there are more women entrepreneurs represented in these larger businesses, but also the way our approach is, we look at how can we engage women as leaders, employees, entrepreneurs, consumers, and also community stakeholders where we do investments. How can we engage them to participate more in the economy? We invest in companies that are committed to closing gender gaps. We provide dedicated financing to women entrepreneurs, and we provide training and mentorship. We provide advice to companies on how they can set policies and implement those, such as addressing gender-based violence. And we try to walk the talk. For example, the World Bank Group, we have a commitment company-wide to double our spend, procurement spend with women-owned businesses over the next 7 years. So I'll stop there. That was quite a bit, but thank you so much.
No, that was excellent. I think you gave us some excellent numbers showing really the business case for investing in women and for supporting women entrepreneurs. And that really is a huge part of what IFC does, as you well explained. And I think, you know, we're actually seeing all the impact of this work. And so this is really excellent. I'll turn now to Loti and ask you also as leading the Women on Boards and business leadership, can you maybe tell us a little bit about also the business case for investing in women and women's leadership, some of the benefits around that from what you've been seeing in your work?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Yanire and the Met community for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you here. So I'm going to start with a statement. I'm going to say gender equality is a human right, and gender diversity and inclusive leadership is good business. So that pretty much wraps up the business case, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. So there's growing evidence that more women in leadership provide all kinds of benefits, including, for example, as measured by financial performance, as well as measured by environment, social, and governance indicators. For example, a study shows that companies with more women on their boards are more likely to improve the quality of environmental reporting, as well as of meeting global environment goals. That's on the environment's front. On the social front, more women in leadership are likely to improve human capital management, anywhere from recruitment, retention, and promotion, as well as talent management. They're also more likely to establish family-friendly policies in their companies. And on the governance side, more women in leadership, especially more women on boards, are more likely to foster a stronger stakeholder engagement, for example, as well as improved board dynamics and performance. Yet, despite the evidence base, despite all these studies that point to the benefit of having more women in leadership, the numbers are still low and progress is still very slow. And I'm going to just give you a few numbers. I've been accused of over providing data, so I'm going to be very low on data this time. So I promise I'll just speak. So using Deloitte data from 2021, and I'm eagerly waiting for the data for 2022 at least, globally, women hold only 19.7% of board seats, only 6.7% of board chair positions, only 5% of CEO positions, and only 15.7% of CFO positions. Mind you that the global being almost 20% compared to the countries in Europe that are over 40%, we have a long, long way to go. And even worse when it comes to CEOs, because countries might have 40% and above, when it comes to CEO positions, immediately drops to single digits. So we have to put a lot of attention to the pipeline. And so what are the barriers to increase female representation? Sorry, put my little talking points aside. So let me give you a visual example of what I mean. I don't know if any of you are aware of the concept of the leaky pipe that was coined by McKinsey a few years ago. Has anybody seen or heard of the leaky pipe? Well, just think of a, this is a US-based study, by the way, and I haven't been able to find a similar one for any other country, but the results are very much applicable to any country, I think, and in fact, in some other countries might be even worse. So just think of the corporate ladder rather than going this way. Think of it as a pipe that is horizontal. Okay, so with this side is the bottom is wide and it goes narrower to the end. So at entry level, men and women start more or less at the same footing, all right? This is the corporate ladder. So men start with about, say, 52% of men compared to 48% of women. So more or less the same. So what do we mean by leaky pipe? So as time goes and as far as women start going up the corporate ladder, they start dropping out. You know, they may have children. They decide that, well, I don't like this. I'm going to continue my studies. So the leaky pipe starts leaking heavily. And what are the reasons? It's not only that there is a lack of childcare, as Heather was mentioning earlier, for example, but there is also lack of mentoring. There is lack of professional opportunities, the enabling environment. There is no networking. And there's, of course, the good old boys network where women are not necessarily welcome unless you know how to play golf or like to drink on weekends or whatever, right? So women also get disillusioned with the work environment or simply choose to drop out and start their own businesses. Also, many of the female executives are working on positions that don't necessarily feed into top tiers. So they end up being stuck in roles that will never make it to the top position. And if you look at this McKinsey leaky pipe, I love it because we use it on training. By the end, women, about 20% or so of women make it from the original 48%. But this is in the US, and this is white women. Do you know the percentage of women minorities who make it to the top? Anybody guess? Almost there, 4%. So 4% of women of color, and that involves me, right? That's Hispanics, Africans, Asians. I mean, they put us all into the color thing. This is in the US. So what I'm saying here is many of the minorities in your countries, could it be caste-based, it could be social, economic base, it could be ethnicity, the minorities will not make it to the top. And in fact, this study even says that some women have not even met their director in their tenure at the company. So that's the leaky pipe for you. So to increase the number of women leaders and prepare them to take on leadership positions, companies need to invest in women. So companies need to take a step back and pay attention to the culture and to the purpose of the company and try to adopt a people-focused business model, which is in line with the ESG integrated model. The good thing is that more and more companies and investors are including sustainability practices into their operations. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to hand it over to you, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You talked about some of the critical issues as well, especially in ensuring women's leadership, but also the reference to the leaky pipeline. And I'll connect that a little bit maybe to some of the work that we're doing, which is really on the enabling environment aspect and the regulations. And this is, as I mentioned before, the advisory program that it's a global program, but a large focus of it has been in Africa, where a lot of the issues lie. And it builds to a great extent on a report put out by the World Bank, which is called Women, Business and the Law. You may have heard of it, which measures really the impact of legislation on women's economic inclusion. And so it looks at different aspects of women's lives and decisions, economic decisions that women make throughout their careers and their active working life as employees, as joining the workforce, but also as entrepreneurs. And really the last report still shows that women globally only have 77% of the rights that men do in terms of the areas that impact their capacity to participate in the economy. That 2.4 billion women around the world still don't have the same rights to work as men. So there are specific legal restrictions to the types of jobs that they can do, to the sectors they can work in, and preventing them really from participating in the workforce. And so we look at these aspects, and really some of the key areas have to do with access to finance and credit, so affecting women's entrepreneurship, and some of the areas around unequal inheritance rights or unequal access to ownership of property within marriage or after marriage, women's participation in employment, access to quality jobs, and that also affects women rising into leadership. So when you look at constraints within marriage or parenthood responsibilities that are mostly on women, and how legislation or the regulatory environment can contribute to greater sharing of responsibilities and perhaps enabling women to stay in the workforce and grow their careers and also grow their businesses. But also looking at some of the areas around harassment, sexual harassment, gender-based violence, which also impact women's participation in the private sector and has a huge cost also to companies, right? So IFC studies showing, for example, that companies, that women affected by gender-based violence might miss up to 10 days of work a year. So that's each employee because of issues around domestic violence. So some of the laws and regulations that can improve the environment for women to participate in the economy and especially in the private sector really have an impact. And the business case is pretty clear. We know that where greater equality exists, where laws are better for women, really more women participate in the workforce, they grow their careers, more women start and run businesses, women earn more relative to men, so the gender gap is lower, and really profitability is higher. So all of this really contributing from the angle of the enabling environment around all of these issues to the business case, to the private sector. So wanted to contribute a little bit around that. But then now turn it back to Loti. And you mentioned the business case for women's leadership and what IFC is doing. Maybe could you give some examples around what you're doing and some of the specific impacts that you're seeing?
Thank you, Paula. So I mentioned the business case for more women in leadership earlier. So based on the business case plus demand from our colleagues in the regions, IFC established the Women on Boards and in Business Leadership. I think it's 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know. It's the official date exactly. And then I was put in charge of it since then, and it's been quite a journey. Basically to promote economic growth and also help attain the SDGs, in addition to, of course, fostering more women in leadership. So what do we do with the Women on Boards and in Business Leadership? And it's a mouthful, so I'm just going to say women in leadership from there on after. We have 4 pillars. The program has 4 pillars. So the first one is we build capacity networks and institutions. What do I mean by that? We deliver a comprehensive training program around the world. 3 modules where we include, for example, the first module includes soft skills, but we also include what do we mean by diversity and inclusive leadership. The second module is on strategies. So we have come up with 7 strategies that we use for the training on how to tackle the leaky pipes, how to foster more women in business leadership. And so those strategies run anywhere from how to make women more visible through data. What's the importance? Why do we need more data? The other one is how to engage more men allies in the conversation, right? They used to be male champions. Somehow they were downgraded to allies now, but still very important in the conversation. How to establish family-friendly policies, for example, returnship. What about those women who drop out for whatever reason to take care of kids, to go back to school, to take for the elderly, yet they have potential. Why can't they go back to work? So we talk about those things during the second module. And the third module is fully dedicated to ESG strategies. And we cover anywhere from the importance of gender disclosure, the nexus between climate and gender, for example, sustainable finance, gender-based violence, which Heather and Paula were talking about, absolutely important, and what companies can do to stem that. We also address crisis management by helping women leaders build resilient and sustainable businesses. And you're all very welcome to look at, we have a series of video interviews in YouTube where we interviewed women leaders from around the world from different industries on how they navigated during the economic downturn as a result of COVID. These women opened up their hearts, and it was really a very humbling experience for me personally. And they talked about how they were able to steer their companies through the crisis, how they grow resilience, how they pivoted, and they came back stronger. And so I highly recommend that you take a look at that. And I guess it's a little bit of a cheap promotion of one of our deliverables, but I really highly recommend because these women are amazing. We also help, as part of the program, we also help increase thought leadership and knowledge generation. And we do that by way of producing reports such as manuals, tip sheets, guidance notes, for example. And colleagues in the field have produced several publications by which they measure, for example, the influence of women on boards and financial performance. Because many a times it's very hard to do correlation or causation, but they were able to do correlation by way of their research. Again, all of this that I'm talking about is on the website, and you're welcome to look at them. And last but not least, we also leverage capital markets to advance women leaders. What do I mean by that? We partner with the United Nations Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative and UN Women to produce, for example, we produced a guidance note on how exchanges promote gender equality. And now we're working on a guidance note on gender disclosure. Because by doing some benchmarking of some of the capital markets, we found out that companies are not reporting. You know, we've heard so much about the importance of disaggregated data. Believe me, it is hugely important because some of these markets are just not reporting. So if you don't see the data, if you don't know what the status is of women, not just in leadership, then it's very hard to come up with strategies to move things forward. In the very near future, we also work with regulators, and that goes to Paula, and exchanges to help move the needle. For example, we help companies include narrative or relevant text to corporate governance codes so that they can, hopefully, if they are enforced, they can improve the percentage of women on their boards as well as in senior management. Through this program, though this program actually is the only one in IFC fully dedicated to women in leadership, I also want to do a shout out to my colleagues, starting with Heather here, who do amazing work with their projects that includes leadership segments, either in private equity, venture capital. There's another colleague pushing for more women leaders in private healthcare. There's another one working with artificial intelligence. Actually, she's a colleague of mine and she's not here. Artificial intelligence for women leaders. So there's a lot of work, and also across across here, my colleagues at the World Bank, they're promoting more women leaders in the renewable sector. They're also working with water and power in areas that are more male dominated and where women leaders are, women period, are harder to come by. So a huge shout out to them. And this is to show you that women in leadership are definitely part and parcel of the work that we do in gender, and that women leaders not only add value, but they create value across all sectors and across all industries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luti. This was excellent, and some great examples of some of the different sectors IFC is working on in this field. Similarly, I wanted to turn to Heather and ask about some of the specific areas that you're working on to promote women's entrepreneurship.
Sure, thanks, Paula. So the way that we approach women's entrepreneurship, I like to call it the 6 C's. And so, all right, I'm seeing the clock here too. We'll go quickly. So 6 C's: capital, that's access to finance; connections, networks, okay, that's both your business networks and your peers; capacity, through training, mentoring, coaching; connectivity, so that's through technology; confidence, I like to call it agency, because I think we're all very confident. It's just a matter of where do we apply that confidence. And lastly, which is what I consider to be one of the most important ways, is through contracts. And that's markets. And the reason why I think it's one of the most important is because we could have all the access to finance and training and networks and technology, but if there's nowhere to sell goods and services in markets, then what's the point? So really quickly, one of the programs that we focus on is called Sourcing to Equal. This is a program, the commitment is to connect 5,000 women-owned and led businesses in emerging markets to procurement contracts. So I mentioned earlier, only 1% of corporate spend gets into the hands of women. We'd like to change that. So we have a program, we're piloting it in Kenya. We're coming to Colombia next month, so very excited to come to Latin America. And so what this program does is we work with companies to help them identify in their procurement operations, where are there opportunities, contract opportunities for women entrepreneurs. We then work with women entrepreneurs and do procurement readiness trainings. What is a tender? What documents do I need to put together? How do I find them? How do I position my business? How do I know if I can deliver on the contract? All these questions we help answer to facilitate women to be able to bid on these. And then we also look at supply chain finance. What are the working capital products that can be provided to women entrepreneurs that can enable them to cover their day-to-day costs, but also to be able to deliver on their contracts? So I see the clock ticking very quickly. And so that is one program I'd like to highlight. We also work with our World Bank Group Corporate Procurement to run trainings for entrepreneurs to provide opportunities on how can you do business with the bank. And so stay tuned because those trainings are coming up, but I'll pass it back to you, Paula.
Thank you so much. As clock is ticking, I thought maybe we could open for at least one question from the audience, if there's someone who would like to ask a question, and then we can maybe do closing remarks. So we have 2 hands up. Is there a microphone, or can we?
Thank you so much for the brilliant presentation. It's very helpful. I wanted to ask you on a practical level, especially throughout Latin America, especially for you, Lottie, for women on boards. I see in Costa Rica where I work, there's very little opportunities for women that are not coming from the corporate world, and there's women that add a lot of value. What do you suggest practically for them to do to turn to? What's next?
Thank you. Yeah, Costa Rica, I love the numbers actually. That's a very good question, and that's the kinds of things that we help. For example, in Colombia, we have an established program. Actually, my program started and planted the seeds, if you will, because a few years ago we delivered the first training. And they wanted us back, but there was no budget. You know how that works. And so an academia, a university took over, and they've taken the program to the next level. So what I'm saying here is that you need to, or these women, I don't know if they're associations or not, but networking is super important. Professional associations, super important. So you need to build momentum. You need to see what the needs are. You also need to come up with who is board ready and who is not, and who needs to be board ready. And that's what, so basically this takes a multifaceted approach. It's not just one thing or the other, is everything. You also need to look at your numbers. What are your numbers? Where do you want to go from there? So there's quite a lot that you can do and that these women can do actually, and also look at your pipeline. Like I said earlier, right? You may want to make it to the board, but do you have the pipeline that will do that? How many women are ready to take on these roles and responsibilities? So there's quite a lot. Sorry, I'm being all over the place. It's just that it takes quite a lot of planning, but it can be done. But definitely you have to start identifying your landscape and then go from there.
Thank you. Would you
Yeah,
maybe
I have
very
a question.
quickly?
Thank you so much for the great panel discussion. And I'm a postdoc with the Johns Hopkins University and work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So particularly because I'm so much interested in the topic, this panel discussion was amazing. So thank you so much. So my question is, like, I was reading a report by IFC on particularly on this investing in women, which came in 2017. And so there are some case studies, business case studies, and which is based on evidences. My question for the panel is, how do you put the culture part in the context? Like, you know, because I've been reading this case studies, and then there are case studies from Africa to India to different countries, and I'm wondering that how IFC looks into the context of culture when you take the business case, and how do you identify the opportunities and challenges in this context? Thank you.
Great question. And thanks so much. Thanks so much for reading the report. That's amazing. Okay, from 2017. Yes, we're still relevant. That's fantastic. So how we apply in a cultural context, obviously it's going to vary. I mean, typically when we go into a market, we do an analysis. We look at the laws and the regulation, what's feasible, what's not. But we also take into a dynamic kind of the informal culture and dynamics. And that's through focus groups, through conversations, through interviews. I'll give you an example. A while ago, we did some work in the West Bank in Gaza. We worked with the largest bank there because they were very interested in how can they get more women entrepreneurs access to finance, the POS terminals where you can pay for goods, et cetera. And so we did quite a few trainings. And the first thing we did, and this was at the advice of our counterpart at the bank, and she said, okay, we need to sit down and talk to these women on what do they need to get permission to do. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, we need to get permission. But what do they need to get permission from their families, the male figures in their families, in order to participate in the training? This came through dialogue, through conversations. What we ended up doing was inviting their male counterparts. Some of it was their brothers, some was their fathers, some was their husbands, to the trainings to participate in the first 3 trainings so that they needed to get comfortable with it. That's a very unique circumstance. And whether or not you agree with doing that, it's what we needed to do within that market. And it worked. And also we invited the male loan officers to participate in the training. And after we were done, we did a conversation. They said their perceptions had changed. They actually realized women can do business. So that's just one practical example. Not all of that will come out in the case study, but it's a great question. So thanks for asking it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Loti. I think this was a great conversation. I learned a lot as well. I think everybody did. And I think we connected all the dots and really kind of gave a good perspective from different angles of the work and what IFC is doing on gender. And a key part of it is understanding what the issues are, right? So from our perspective, I'll just add that one of the aspects of regulation is also on gender disaggregated data, working with regulators on the access to finance side. So that's also something that we're working on. But overall, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you again, Yaniri, for having us. Thank you to Met. And hopefully we can continue the conversation offline. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. It was very intense, this break. There was a lot of energy, positive energy and feminine energy in the room. And I saw a lot of people doing like a quality networking. Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure to introduce 2 colleagues and friends and 2 people that I really admire and I know well from so many years in different ways. And I know the work that they are doing, the amazing work they are doing in Latin America, both of them. So first of all, we are going to start with Jose Felix Echegoyen, that as you can see is the Senior Global Lead for the LAC in gender finance. He's working, his work, I think I will appreciate if you can share a little bit also about yourself, because we always like the story that is behind the people. And so why are like just a short bio of yourself. What is your experience in banking? And just to know a little bit about yourself. And also what kind of work you're doing and which are the key stakeholders of your work, because we have in the audience some investors, some people that are working with a very strong background in finance and investment. So I really appreciate you share with us that part of women in banking and also about yourself. Thank you so much and welcome to the second day of Women Entrepreneurs Forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaniri. And first of all, I want to recognize that this was a trip that took a little toll on me, because yesterday I was in a panel at 5 p.m. in Bogota. I took the red eye and I got here at 12. So bear with me because my brain is still adjusting. So anyway, as Yaniri said, I started my career back in 1995 in Argentina. I started doing consumer and commercial banking in Citibank, and then from there I worked at the regulator in Argentina, the Superintendency of Banks. We were discussing the crisis in 2001. I was lucky not to be there. I was on my way to study in Chicago. And after that, I returned after my MBA into banking, worked with Citi for some years, and then Santander. And I was there, and I wasn't feeling that what I was doing had a sense or a purpose. And that's where I started my interviews with IFC. And I always tell the story that was the longest process someone can have, because I started interviewing with IFC in December 2016, and I was offered a job in July 17. I had to do, I think it was like 19 interviews with people around the world, which was very interesting. That's the sort of scrutiny that IFC does with people that we want to hire. So if you want to be hired by us, be very patient. So anyway, banking on women at the time in Latin America, we have 2 or 3 large transactions. Monse can talk about those times. But in those years, the main, we can say, challenge was, how do we scale this business? How do we get, from a portfolio that at the time was about $500 million to something that really can move the needle? And since then, we have more than tripled the portfolio. The portfolio in Latin America now is in excess of $1.5 billion. We have done transactions from the very south of our region, from Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, all the way to Central America and Mexico. We have worked with very large financial institutions like Itaú. We just did a gender bond with Itaú last year. Well, it was December, actually, the end of the year. But we also work with NBFIs, with what we call non-bank financial institutions like Genesis in Guatemala. So it's not just about big ticket, big bank transactions. You can also do, small ticket, very targeted sort of transactions with NBFIs or MFIs, microfinance institutions. We have done a few, and we have some in the pipeline. The program has evolved also, and one of the things you see the topic today is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we start this journey. We started with a gender focus, but lately it's not only about gender. We have done the first ever transaction with a focus on the LGBTI plus community in Colombia with Davivienda. We have done two transactions, well, 3 transactions actually, with a focus on migrants. So the intersection of migrants, Venezuelan migrants, and women. We have done transactions in the intersection between women and Afro-descendants, for example, in Brazil. So again, it started with gender, it started with a focus on women, but then, we evolved in a more integrated cross, communities approach. What I see more and more is that banks and NBFIs would not buy something that is just gender and it has just a gender flag. They want to go further. They want to sub-segment their portfolio so that they can impact, for example, I don't know, women in agri, rural women. So you have to go deeper. Our core offer, the women SME offer, is something that is in the past in LAC. Maybe in other regions, there's still, that sort of need, but LAC has evolved from that approach to a more segmented approach. And we also started working, and in that, LAC is also the leader in innovation around the world with things like women housing. So we did the first transaction in women housing. Monse is going to tell us the story about the women housing program, but that's where we are evolving. We're evolving in, integrating, going deeper into some products, and our partners like Met and others are helping us to be more effective in, implementing those projects, both from the investment side and the advisory side. So with that, I don't know if I can just show you a few slides one or two with the numbers, and whoops, not taking it. It's that one. No. Do I click it? Okay. Oh, there we go. So here are the segments that I talk about. I briefly cover, and you can see at the very end also the silver economy, or the, you know, that's the one area that we are still exploring. There's two leads that actually that we have with for the silver economy, because as you know, the population around the world and in Latin America, in some countries, is getting older. And you know, the 60 and 65 plus percentage as a total population is now in like about 10%, but is expected to double in the next 20, 25 years. So more pensioners, more people that will not have the means to maintain their level of life. And many of them, what they're doing, they are getting a part-time job. They are opening businesses. They are getting additional sources of income. So that's another segment where we want to explore. And as I said, we started with the SMEs, then we move into the migrants, then we move into the Afro-descendants and native communities, and now we're getting into the you know, silver economy. So that's a little bit of the journey. And as you see in the numbers, all of these you know, communities, or all of these groups, population groups, are not only important, but they are growing as a percentage of the population, which means that it is good business to have an offer for each of these segments. This is what I told you, and you know, in the middle, I highlighted the fact that Latin America represents more than 40% of the global program. So the IFC, you know, Banking on Women program, has grown a lot. I think it took us how many years to get to 2 billion? Like 8 years? 8 years to get to 2 billion, and then in 3 years we doubled it. Yeah. So that shows the commitment of IFC and all the community of donors that we have, like we of WIFI, to this cause. This is a cause that not only us in IFC, but many others have in their top 2-3 priorities. No, we always make fun with IDB that we fight for the same clients. They usually do the first transaction, we do the second, or we do the first, they do the second. But that's a way to show that that we have the same values, we have the same goals, we have the same targets, so that we can impact the society we work in. This is the pipeline and some of the projects I mentioned. As you can see, as I briefly cover, we have big financial institutions, small financial institutions, focus on migrants, or FTPs, they are called, so forcibly displaced population, SME, core SME, you know, silver economy, and the different segments. So what this shows is that, again, to get support from us on these programs, you don't need to be Davivienda or Itaú. You can be a small MFI, and we can help you develop a program like this. And let me close with one example I already covered, which is Banco Itaú. With Banco Itaú, we started a relationship many years ago. It was actually I think the second investment that the Banking on Women did, the largest at the time, $470 million. And Itaú, as you can imagine, just to give you some numbers, Itaú is the largest bank in private bank in Latin America. They have between 45 and 50 million clients. So they have more clients than many countries' population times 5 or times 10. And they embrace this cost, you know, the women entrepreneur cost. And they started to invest money and to put money, because you have to put the money where your mouth is, you know, and they developed this program in different phases. We helped them in all those phases, and the last phase, which is the one that we are highlighting here, was the one focused on the Afro-descendant population in the Northeast. Why Afro-descendant population in the Northeast? Because, as you know, the Northeast of Brazil is the poorest, region. I was there in November. It was crazy hot. It was like 37 Celsius, and it was the winter. And I was there, and we were, visiting some clients, some women clients, and you could tell the impact that these programs have there. Because in Sao Paulo, you are in Avenida Paulista, there's the best shoppings, the best, you can get Prada, Dolce Gabbana, whatever. You go there, you go to the Northeast, you're not going to see any shop like that. You're going to see the reality of a country that has these differences, no? And that's where we said, okay, Itaú, we did the first one. You use the use of proceeds, wherever you wanted, maybe in Sao Paulo, in Rio, and in the south. But now we want you to impact where the country needs more. So it's the Northeast, is the Afro population. No? So that's how we, get to influence and you will get to impact different populations, not just by giving money away, but also, funneling that money into the populations that need it. So that's the story I wanted to share with you, and I pass it to Monse, and if there's any question, happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose Felix. First of all, like Monse, that you're an expert on something, but I remember, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years ago that we were talking, I love the housing. I think it's very needed. I would love to work in the housing. And it's great to see that now you're like the lead in this, right? You were telling me, I would love to work in this, right? Remember? It was like, I remember it was like 3 years ago? Yes, 3 years ago. And now she's the one in this topic. She's the one at the AFC in this topic. So it's good to dream big. I say, I would love to be here and not only being there, but now as the lead, is the person that is leading Latin America of the project. So first of all, we would like to know what is that? Because I hear a lot about what is housing for women and why, and what has been done. So I would like to thank you so much. And of course, we want to know more about yourself also. I know that you're a Spaniard too. No. So it's good. It's good to have, I'm very proud of being Spanish today. So it's very good. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then about your topic that you're leading. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Yanire, and thank you, the Med community. And I have to say that I admire you back big time, and we have known each other for quite some time. So, and usually I don't say that I'm from Spain because I think it's obvious as soon as I open my mouth, but I'll say that I'm from But yeah, I've been working on IFC for quite some time, and I was here at the very beginning of the program. I'm one of the co-founders, so I'm very proud to say that. We were 2 people at the beginning, and now we are 7 globally. And then we have gender champions all over the regions and people like Jose leading the programs in LAC and other regions. No? But I was there at the very beginning when we were only 2 people trying to convince not only the banks, but also the people internally to see basically the business case, no? Which is the most important thing that you have to show, not only the financial institutions, but also the people in the institutions to see that this is also not something nice to do, but it's something that is worth it for the societies, for the economies, but also because the financial institutions have benefits for serving women, no? As Jose was saying. So the Banking on Women has been focusing for 11 years in basically women-owned SMEs, small and medium enterprises. And as Jose was saying, now we really want to integrate gender into the different products within the financial sector. So we are trying to work with the insurance market, with capital markets. We are trying to work with housing and other products, no? And the reason why we want to do this is because when we talk to the banks and the financial institutions, they basically think about women as entrepreneurs, but not in the variety of roles that women actually have in their lives. And one thing that was really, really remarkable, I think, especially for me and our colleagues, when we go to banks, we were asking, what do you have in the mortgage space? Oh, well, here basically we don't have any differentiation for women and men. So we are very gender neutral as something that is sort of like good, which in truth is not the case, no? Because unless you recognize the needs, the pains, the challenges that the different segments have, you are not really serving them well, right? I always think about this slide that has 3 kids watching a baseball game or maybe soccer game, and they try to watch it with a fence in front. There is one tall kid, then one medium, and then one in a wheelchair. So if you say that, you know, equal opportunities for everybody or equality for everybody, you give them a box with the same height to each kid. But probably the tall one doesn't need it. The medium one maybe needs it. But for sure the one in the wheelchair will need something special. So by saying that you don't discriminate or that you don't really tailor your offering, you are not serving the people that are your clients well. So I always think about that. The same for the women. But the reason why I think that housing has to be tailored is because women are, just an obvious fact, 50% of the population. So it's a segment that in itself is extremely important, right? But also we looked into the levels of property ownership for women, and this is something that Paula touched upon in the previous panel. Actually, women only access property and land between 10% and 20% globally. So even the most pessimistic, the most optimistic figures is only 20%. So that's extremely also relevant, no? Not only because the house is a necessity, is the safe place to be, but also because it has a lot of sort of like trickle effects and connotations, no? The house can have also a productive usage. But anyway, on the why, basically is because of that. We are 50% of the population. We only have a small fraction of property ownership. That's extremely low. Usually banks, when you ask them, they don't have an offering that is tailored for housing. Also, IFC is gender mainstreaming in the different product lines. So it's extremely important for us as part of our strategy. And now we just want to roll this program that I'm going to maybe talk a little bit about, Janire, if you don't mind. But is the other one? Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So basically, those are the whys. And let me show you. Gracias. I'm going to talk in the meantime. So basically, IFC, like 4 years ago, decided to actually look into this space. And we did a market scoping on 3 countries, which were Colombia, India, and Kenya. And so we did this research and we looked into 3 different pillars, aspects. One was the demand side. So what are the challenges and what are the pains that women have to access finance? We look into the supply, the financial institutions, and we also look into the legal framework environment. This report was called Her Home, Housing Finance for Women. It's already there. I already talked about this a little bit. And so we looked into this supply side, demand side, and the legal framework. And even though these countries were very different, we found a lot of similarities, no? Basically, very briefly, from the supply side, we asked the banks that we interview and whether they had gender desegregated data, that also Paula mentioned in the previous panel, and they didn't have any gender desegregation, which means that they don't really know. First of all, they don't know how many women they have in their portfolio, much less they understand how they behave, what they need, what they want, what they use. That is one. The second, very proudly, we have gender neutral processes. So we don't differentiate for women and men, which means also that they don't really understand the challenges that women have. The third, they really have a difficulty to underwrite the risk. And I just talked to you before, and we were saying possible solutions for this. The reason why banks cannot underwrite the risk is because most of the women in the emerging markets, they work in informality. So therefore, they don't have income documentation, they don't have a stable income, and banks don't want, they feel very uncomfortable to take that risk. So we were talking about how to partner with fintechs and digital platforms, because there is so much digital footprint stored in these digital platforms that actually are alternative data for financial institutions and non-financial institutions to evaluate the creditworthiness of the women. So anyway, that was part of the networking, which was very useful. And of course, in many markets, the capital markets are not developed, so there is no availability of long-term. And so mortgages are extremely expensive for the middle and low income people. No? And then the demand side, as I said, women work in the informality. So they find a lot of challenges to access the formal sector. They don't have down payments. Usually there is a gender pay gap as well between women and men, as you all know. So they have less savings to provide for the down payment. They like to, instead of accessing mortgages, they prefer to build incrementally, especially in Africa. Instead of just applying for a mortgage, they build a room and then they start building other rooms around. Also, there are cultural and social norms, for instance, mobility restrictions, or whether in a family, the head of the household by default is defined legally as the male. So the male is the controller of the assets during the marriage. And then we also find low financial literacy and awareness, even of the property rights. They don't know that they have actually a piece of asset that they share with the husband. And then the legal framework. Also, governments tend to have programs, but they don't have a gender lens. So women are left out. And also the marital inheritance and transfer laws that was mentioned before, and just very briefly on the previous slide, 40% of the economies that the business and the law looked at every 2 years, 40% limit women's property rights, specifically. And then I think that it was around 10 or 15% of these economies have the male as the default head of the household. So by default, they control the assets in the marriage. And I could go on and on this, but I'm going to pass it on because that's just part of the legal framework. No? And then just a little bit wrapping up, why is so important housing? It should be like like non-brainer. No, it basically is the safety, is a right for everybody, but actually it's much more than that. And these are just a summary of the benefits. Home ownership provides a woman and anybody that accesses a home, actually, it is a financial asset. You can pledge that as collateral for any loan, including a business loan. So that's already an extra usage, a productive usage. Also, accessing home ownership and housing finance allows you to build credit history. Most of the women in the informality, they don't have credit history. So it's a vicious circle. They are not able to enter the formal sector. No? So through this, they actually build a credit history. Of course, the third one, they mitigate the risk that the banks see on them because they are informal. And last but not least, and I think that we all experienced this through the pandemic and now, home enables you to have an office in your house, you can run a business. But this was not only because of the pandemic, even before the pandemic. Many people in the emerging markets are running their businesses from the home. They even have the facade in places like South America, in other countries, in Africa, in Asia. They have kiosks in the front of the houses. They even rent rooms as a business. So house is much more than just the safe place to be, which is already extremely important, don't get me wrong. But house has a very inherent productive usage for the women. And that's why I think that IFC, and we are looking for partners, and thank you also to Janeri and this partnership, because 3 years ago when we spoke, this was not even in the map, but now it's starting to be in the financial institutions' minds, and also thanks to partners like Met. So anyway, I pass it on to you. Thank you.
So I would like to, before we are at the end, but I would like to have just like a short, maybe 1 minute closing from each one of you. So as the experts of this field. So, so I would like to know if you have any recommendation for the people in the audience. You have to, I would like to tell you that unfortunately we couldn't invite to all the people. We have like almost 3,000 people registered for this Women Entrepreneurs Forum first edition. So we are very, very grateful that the FC opened the door. We have a very limited invitation, but they just told me that almost 95% of the people that we invited, they are all here with us. So thank you so much for all of you for being. Not only that, the people that are here from different countries, from I see Ecuador, Brazil, Costa Rica, of course, Colombia, and not only countries, but also cities from different Mexico, sorry. So not only in Latin America, but also in Asia, in Africa. So thank you so much to all of you for coming. But the most important is the people that are here are the real change makers. Because we have here like people that are investors, that are entrepreneurs, that are like playing different roles. And I would like you to consider that this audience that is very diverse. I'm going to say just a little bit in Spanish because I know that some of you're coming from far, but just what are the recommendations for them once they go back? Because I don't want to create these spaces for nothing. It was a lot of work. And not only that, we found the sponsors, not for these. Of course, the IFC is hosting and providing the catering and all of that. For the people and the institutions, like, for example, Confenalco, to pay the flights and the hotel to come here. So we work so hard to be sure that the people, they have a one-week experience as a community, because Met Community is a community, to be sure that once they go back, they have to do something. Right? So what are the recommendations that each one of you give them to them? So in this last just 1 minute. So quería comentaros que los que estáis aquí no es casualidad. This is not like a coincidence. No estáis aquí por casualidad. Cada uno sabéis por lo que estáis. Conozco al 95% de las personas que estáis aquí desde hace mucho tiempo, o algunos menos tiempo, pero yo sé y estamos muy seguros todo el equipo de Met y ahora la FC que sois changemakers, sois agentes de cambio. Una vez que vais después de esta experiencia que veis aquí, en este caso financiada por instituciones, de aquí tenéis que hacer algo a cambio, ¿no? Y está en vosotros. O sea, ahora la gente ha apostado, ha invertido, se ha dedicado una semana, se ha volcado un montón de personas. Tenemos 30 personas de Met volcadas durante 3 meses para hacer esta experiencia única. ¿Y ahora qué? ¿Cuál es el último minuto de recomendación que nos dan los expertos para los agentes de cambio que sois vosotros? Muchas gracias.
I mean, if I have to focus on one call to action, that would be something that Paula said, and is gender segregated data. So start measuring and share with us and share with the community what are the numbers for the women portfolio, the women migrants portfolio, the women Afro portfolio, the women LGBTI portfolio. That's how we start to create awareness and conscious. Because if it's not measured, it basically goes, below the radar.
So the data, so the starting point is the data. Necesitan datos y los datos vienen del terreno. Necesitan números de qué es lo que está pasando hoy para ver cuál es medir el impacto a futuro. Y para eso es clave instituciones que estáis ahí en el terreno, para que you have to work on providing data, quality data, which is not easy at all, to know where is the starting point and where are the next, where do you want to go, right?
And you would assume that very advanced institutions like commercial banks have data. I will tell you it's not the case. even the most advanced banks around the world and in Latin America, they don't have it. So that's where we start. We start with the numbers. We start with making and showing the business case. Help us with that. The money is there, but we need to have data to support the business case.
That's a difficult question. No, I'm going back to, I'm gonna steal a sentence that somebody said last week, I think it was during another panel. And this person said that it's gonna take 100, if we continue with the path, with the same speed that we are having now, we will take 150 years to achieve gender parity, gender equality and equity. 150 years. I was thinking even about my daughter. She's not even going to be able to see it because she's 7 and she will not see gender parity. I think there is such a sense of urgency, I think. So for me, it's a little bit more overview. I think that this is an ecosystem and this is a proof of it, that we all have a role to play. And I will just add a gender lens to whatever you are doing, and just to have that hat always, because I think that there is always a gender angle in whatever we are doing. And for sure, there is a sense of urgency. I think that the pandemic, in some ways, it really negatively affected women. So I think that, we have to continue pushing for making this again, for putting it at the forefront. So just to have a gender angle hat in whatever we all do in our different roles, because we are all part of the ecosystem, and we will, as Yanire said, we are, the ones implementing the changes. So.
O sea, tener unas gafas y un gorro como siempre con el enfoque de género en todo lo que hacéis, y para medir hay que tener datos. Thank you so much for all this knowledge and experience that you're sharing, and this short period is not easy to summarize. Thank you for showing the data, the best practices, and the work in the field, and congratulations for the amazing work. And we are now at the end of this amazing 2 panels, and I would like to appreciate and to thankful not only for them, but also the person that was doing something in this institution, in any institution. It's not easy and requires the work of a lot of people. In this case, thank you so much for Angelo Delati, that he was my former, as you heard at the beginning, my former boss. Angelo Delati was mi jefe, ¿no? Siempre va a estar mi jefe. Cuando tú tienes un jefe, siempre es jefe. Dice que soy yo la jefa. That is not true. I'm not the boss. He is the boss. But saying that, I really appreciate, because at the end, whatever you do is not about the institutions. It's about the people. So, and in this case, this was made not only because of the support of Angelo, that has the status, the work, and all of that, but also my colleague, Paula Tavares, that I had the honor to work also with her, to know her like professionally and later personally. And it's amazing when the things are combined in one person. So when you see people that are professional and then like personal equality, is like impressive. And this is what we have in this room. So I encourage you to spend like a few minutes. But before of that, I will appreciate if Angelo Delati, you can give us like the last 5 minutes, like for the closing remarks. Thank you so much, Angelo, for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, it works. Thank you. I thought we were going to do it together. That's what you told me before. You're not going to run away. So I did not know that I was going to give you a closing remark. I did not go to prepare because I had a meeting, so I just came back.
That's the best. The best.
Yeah,
it's always when it's spontaneous. You don't need to prepare.
Look, let me tell you one thing. I was a bit nervous at the beginning when I was giving this. I don't know if you noticed it, but because for the first time in a long time, my wife was actually watching me. She was online, and she texted me after in WhatsApp, "You're not looking enough. You have to look up. You're not looking up. Look up." So I was with her the last time, I think it was in Rio. I was giving a speech in Rio. I was not with the IFC, and we were together before kids and everything else. So we were having fun. But it was very different because everybody was there, and so this was the first time she was online. She was looking at me and she was giving me comments.
That's the power
right?
behind
so
the power.
Not doing. Yeah, she's the real boss. So anyway, So look, I think I haven't thought this through, but what I think is that we have such a, let me rephrase this, you have such a power together. What I said at the end of my intervention, that you have to use these opportunities to learn to cooperate and to cross-fertilize. And what I mean by cross-fertilization is to learn from each other, to share experiences, but to mentor each other as well, right? It's not so easy to be an entrepreneur, and I'm not an entrepreneur, so I cannot judge, but I've seen enough of them and I've supported enough of them in my
That's
career.
not true. You're an entrepreneur, which is even more more difficult.
Okay.
This is an example.
But what I'm trying to say is, in your field, find a good mentor. Find somebody where you can share ideas. And a mentor doesn't mean that they are superior to you, or there is not such a relationship. It is a way for you to share your concerns, your difficult moments. Use these opportunities to find 1, 2, 3 people that can share things with you. We have tried to do it, Yanira and I. Somehow I think that this has worked for both of us. It is not just for her. I have learned so much from Yanira. And so I think this is always a dual reciprocal, thank you, a reciprocal way of doing things. And you both gain, and when it's 3 or 4, it's even better. We don't do this enough, and I'm seeing one of the things I do. I'm gonna say this, it's not related. I'm the chair of a Boy Scout troop around here. And I've been the chair during COVID and now past COVID. And what I've seen is like 100 families. It's one of the largest troops in Virginia. And what I've seen is that during COVID, parents' participation dropped out. It's like nobody talks to each other. They don't come to the meetings. They drop the kids, and then they just expect that somebody else is going to do everything else. And I think that's a bit of what has happened after COVID across everything. It's like we expect that, okay, we just have a Zoom call and then things are going to happen. It's not like this. And the benefit of these events is really that you are able to talk to each other, you're able to meet, you're able to share experiences in a way that a Zoom call or MS Teams is not going to be able to do. What VOW is the benefit of COVID, and I'm going to the beginning, seems like I planned this, maybe I did. What VOW is the benefit of COVID is that my wife can look at me online and tell me, hey, these are things that you should do better. So why am I saying this? Create the relationship, then use the tools. Today, what the big benefit, the only big benefit of COVID is that we are so, it's normal for us to have a call with our children, with our bosses, with our staff on Zoom. And because we have had that personal relationship, the call is actually fruitful, right? So use these moments, create this relationship, then don't lose them. Because the worry thing that I have of these retreats, meetings, conferences, is that we leave the place and nothing happens, right? We have all these promises we make to each other of, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And they are, to us, the promises, and to other people. And then we carry forward very little. So my suggestion, and I'm going to close this, I said we were going to do it together, but I'm sorry. So my suggestion that I have is, if you meet somebody that you feel a connection with, give yourself a 3-month objective, a 6-month objective, and say, this is what I'm going to do for you, with you, in the next 3 to 6 months, and do it as a reciprocal way, and hold yourself to it, so that you actually get things happening and you continue those relationships. Make it real.
So I think that it's very, I mean, it's a coincidence or not, I don't know, but the last 2 key messages here are basically the same, but like yesterday, which is one is when you give, you receive. And when you give to the right person, you receive even more, multiply. That's the first, and it's very powerful. And the second is try to be sure that you're always close to people that they are better than you. At least, maybe not in everything, maybe, but at least in something. Don't try to be always you the star, because this is not going to help you to grow. So if you're with people that are always better than you, they're going to push you to be a better person, a better professional, and to create a greater impact. So it's amazing, but at the end, like all of this is summarized in something that I encourage you to continue to work, and do not forget that this is not about us. This is about you. And we are here like just facilitating and creating this space. And I invite all of you to continue, not only tomorrow that we have a different dynamic. It's going to be a workshop and a lot of fun with mentors, that I see a lot of mentors here. And tomorrow you have the opportunity to meet them in person. Not only that, we are going to have today a cocktail that you're all of you more than welcome in the Hotel Washington rooftop. Very glamorous. You're also invited. And your wife, of course. So now that she's watching, so she's invited. So thank you so much, Angelo, for creating this. Of course, Paula and the speakers and the experts. And hopefully we can do this at least once a year in the IFC. I know that is not easy, but we will forget the pain and we will create something, because I know that you are an entrepreneur. You say no, but I know that is not true, and your wife knows. So thank you so much. And so hopefully you can enjoy the rest of the day. You can come to the cocktail, super glamorous cocktail in an amazing place. It's my favorite place. I've never been there, but 14 years. But I'm looking forward, because it took us like 4 months to take that space. So, and if not, if you cannot join us, hopefully we can see you tomorrow from 9 to 2. Thank you so much. Bye.